friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Unwanted Parenting Advice. Today we're going to be getting real and talking all about birth trauma. So instead of positive birth stories only, today is all about negative birth stories only. I'm Olivia Scobie, and get ready because here comes some unwanted parenting advice. Birth trauma is a real thing. I know this because A, it's one of my practice specialties and I hear your stories all the time, and B, because I lived it. The birth of my first kid was really scary and really intense. It lasted over days. There were tubes attached to every part of my body, my arm, my back, my face. Even my vagina had a tube coming out of it because I had to clip something to his head to make sure that his heart rate was okay. And I was pretty sure that one or both of us was going to die. It was intense. It was so intense, actually, that the OB who delivered my baby offered my mom, who was my support person, a Valium to help her get through it because even she was feeling really unsettled. And I was a mess afterwards. I was physically really torn up. Emotionally, I was quite torn up. And I was so disappointed that the vision I had for my natural labor in a birth tub had turned into some kind of, I felt like I was in the Matrix. Like, do you remember that scene where all the humans are hooked up to these pods with tubes everywhere? That's how I felt at my birth, which is really far from the vision that I had for it. And we know that birth trauma is linked to postpartum depression, and that was also true for me. I felt like my terrible birth experience really kickstarted a whole host of mood stuff that I wasn't expecting, and it made it really hard for me to bond with my baby. It made it hard for me to feel safe, and I couldn't even really process what had happened because I was so busy as a solo young parent just trying to figure out how to keep my baby alive. And I know now that when we experience trauma, our brains can get stuck. They can get stuck in trauma brain, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. After my birth, I was a nightmare around pregnant people because I was so traumatically open. I needed to find spaces to talk about it and to warn people. So I couldn't stop myself. If I saw like a pregnant person on the subway, I felt the need to warn them about everything that could happen at their birth. Like, what you're doing is really dangerous. There was a bit of that feel to it. So you can imagine how much fun I was at baby showers. I would not wear the positive birth story only buttons, and I would just sit and tell everybody what had happened to me as part of my processing. And reflecting back, I realized how alone I was in trying to make sense of what had happened at the birth. I really felt the impact of that healthy baby, healthy mom rhetoric that we're all given, where we're told that, you know, everyone's okay here, let's just move on from the birth, put a big smile on your face because look, you have a baby. If we're lucky, because we know that not all babies survive traumatic births, and some of us are left with long-term health consequences from birthing. And there's such a lack of support to help birthers like me wrap our heads around it all, right? It can be hard to get answers from our medical team, and sometimes I think that's because they're really vigilant against lawsuits and they don't want to say anything, admit to anything that could get them in trouble. And often there isn't a clear answer to be had about why our births went the way that it did. And our friends and family love us and they mean well, but sometimes they don't know what to say, or they can't really understand how deeply impacted we've been by our birth, or they've been traumatized too if they were there. They have their own experience of the birth. So I created a space for us. I created a space for us to really dig in and talk about what happened and to start the process of healing or integrating our birth stories. I used to run in-person birth trauma healing workshops in Toronto, but I revamped the program and I moved it all online so that you don't all have to fly down to Toronto, although that would be very cool. I'd find that really rad. We're going to be talking all about what birth trauma does to our brains, be talking about that trauma brain, how to cope with flashbacks, how to remember the story, how to start getting unstuck and process and really integrate what's happened, especially if we want to birth again and we're terrified to do so. So if you want to learn more, I have a 2-part webinar series coming up starting June 8th. This is the first one. It's totally free. I would love to have you there. You get lots of freebies. I'm going to post a link to sign up for the webinar series below, so please sign up. And if you're digging what we're talking about here, subscribe to this channel, and we'll be back here every week to talk about a different aspect of parenting. As always, have a great week and stay vigilant against unwanted parenting advice. Thanks so much.